Sound okay, by the way? For
You do. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Welcome, welcome. If you've watched these before, you know what I'm going to ask you to do. Please use the chat and tell us where you're tuning in from. I'm in Seattle. So is Kenji. Miko's in Italy. Nick in Seattle. Hello. We'll give people a few minutes to tune in and then we'll get started. So thank you for your patience. Sacramento, Palm Springs, California representing. I love it.
Mhm.
Queen Anne, hello. Redmond, hello. Bloomington, Minnesota, Whidbey Island, Bellevue, Seattle, welcome. Louisville, Kentucky, hello.
British Columbia.
Oh, yes. London, UK, hello. Alexandria, Virginia, Stockholm, Sweden. I love this. People tuning in from all over the place. Thank you so much for being here. It's the advantage of the noon ones for you Europeans. So I'm glad we're getting people from all over tuning in. All right, we're gonna go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Laura Hamilton. I have a bookshop here in Seattle, Washington. It's called Book Larder, and we sell just cookbooks and food writing. And we do a lot of author talks as well. And so we do many of them in store, but during the pandemic, we started doing some of these virtual events as well, and have continued to do them in situations like this where we really wish the author could be here in person with us, but we still want to have a great conversation about their book. So we're delighted today to welcome Emiko Davies. She is going to be in conversation with Kenji Lopez-Alt, and they are going to talk about the book. They're going to leave time for your questions. If you could please put your questions in that little Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, if you have any. Talk to each other in the chat and leave your questions for Emiko and Kenji in the Q&A. That would be really helpful. We also have closed captioning enabled for this today. So if you would like to turn that on, there's again a button at the bottom of your screen that should say show captions, and you just press that and you can turn on the closed captions. You can support the talk today by purchasing a copy of Emiko's absolutely beautiful book from Book Larder. I will drop a link to that in the chat as well so that you will have easy access to that. It's sold out in a lot of places. We managed to get some copies, so we hope that you, if you haven't already, have a chance to check that out, that you will do that. All right, so oh, one more thing, I forgot. We are also recording the talk today, and so it will be on YouTube within the next 48 or so hours. If you need to pop off early and want to tune back in or want to share it with others, you'll have the opportunity to do that. So please join me in welcoming Emiko Davies and Kenji Lopez-Alt.
Hello.
Hi,
How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you.
It's nice to have you virtually here in Seattle. You're calling in from your home in Italy right now,
Yeah, that's
where
right.
everyone's asleep. Are you burning the
Not
midnight
quite.
oil here?
Yeah, no, people go to bed late here. My little people go to bed late, so they're still
How old are your little ones now? Is it three? Three of them?
no, two girls, 5 and 10.
Two girls, 5 and 10. That's a fun age.
Yeah, a handful, but really, no, really fun. Yeah.
What kind of stuff do they eat on a day-to-day basis? Like what does a week in their meals look like?
So, I would say that the older one definitely has more Italian tastes, like she
Hmm.
loves pasta, pizza, focaccia, like really all of those kind of things, and prosciutto,
Hmm.
And the little one won't really eat any of those things, maybe pizza, but
Hmm.
she really likes rice,
Okay.
noodles, gyoza. Like she's really got more kind of Asian tastes.
Yeah, yeah. This
So we
sounds like
do a mix.
this sounds like my two kids. My older one who's six, loves Italian food, likes making handmade pasta. She loves prosciutto. And then my 2-year-old right now, the only thing he loves is rice. Like if he sees rice on the table, just rice, rice.
Yeah.
Um, and in the pantry, we even keep some of those little microwave ready, 1-minute rice bowls. And so when he gets into the pantry, he'll just grab a stack of like 4 of them and walk up like rice, rice.
Like it's time for dinner.
Yep.
That's great. Oh wow.
um,
I don't have access to those here, so I have to make rice on the
oh
stove.
yeah.
And I'm like, okay, 20 minutes, you gotta wait for it.
Rice cooker? No rice cooker?
No rice cooker. We have really small apartments in Italy, so
Yeah.
I've never had enough space for a rice cooker. So I've always just cooked it in a pan.
So talking about rice, your new book, Gohan, I got a little sneak peek of it because I had asked you about bento boxes because I was writing a piece for the Times about bento boxes, and there is a section in Gohan in your new book about bento boxes. So you sent me that package and sent me the whole book at the same time, which I was grateful for. But when I saw the title of your book, I was like, oh man, this is a perfect cookbook title. I mean, the kind where you're like, if I had thought of that title, I would have like immediately looked it up and like, somebody must have written this book already, you know. Can you talk to us about the concept of Gohan, the title of the book, and yeah, and what it means to you?
Yeah. When I first thought about writing this book, which is inspired by the Japanese food that I grew up with. My mom is Japanese. I knew it was going to be called Gohan. That was the first word that sort of came to mind. And the first thing I did was Google it and see if someone must have already written a book called Gohan. And luckily, no, they hadn't.
Yeah.
And I sort of wrote a little story about it. It kind of more for me in my mind to sort of think about this title, because I was really like sort of stuck on this title.
Mm-hmm.
I really wanted to call it this. Gohan means rice, means cooked rice, like a bowl of rice in Japanese. And it's also the word that I heard so often when I was little and as a teenager, when dinner was ready. My mom or whoever was cooking, or my friends' moms. We grew up with a lot of other families that were half Australian, half Japanese.
Mm-hmm.
And the word to call everyone to dinner was Gohan. It means to me it meant like something you eat at home, and
Mm-hmm.
home cooking, and it meant being with your family. For me, there's a lot of nostalgia around like Gohan, like a bowl of rice.
Right,
And
right.
so I knew immediately I wanted to have that name, and I kind of wrote down a little thing about it, which ended up becoming part of the introduction. And I sent it to my mum, and I said, because I don't speak fluent Japanese, I do understand a lot of it, but it's like toddler level.
Yeah.
Not
Same
very
with
good.
me.
Yeah.
Was it spoken at home growing up?
Well, I was my mum's first child, so
Mm-hmm.
she did speak Japanese quite a lot with me, and she took me to Japan a lot when I was little
Mm-hmm.
because my dad was traveling all the time, and so she was on her own in Australia, away from her family. So of
Mm-hmm.
course she decided to spend a lot more time in Japan when I was little, when my
Mm-hmm.
dad was away. So I did grow up with it. My first words were Japanese. But it remained at that level.
Right.
And then I went to preschool and just spoke English. But I wanted my mum's opinion. Like, would it be weird to call a book Gohan? Maybe that's why no one has already written a book
Right.
called Gohan. So I wrote to her and I said, what do you think? Would this be a good title? And she said, it's perfect. It's like, to me, that's like a nourishing home cooked meal, and something made with love. She said that's the perfect word for it.
As the son of a Japanese mother, I find it hard to believe that that a Japanese mother would call anything perfect. But no, I mean I do think it's perfect.
Paraphrasing.
Yeah. And how did it progress from there? I mean, it's so obviously so different from your other cookbooks, which are about your adopted home, about Italian food. What made you decide sort of now was the time to write a Japanese cookbook?
Well, I actually pitched this book first in 2019 to my
Mm-hmm.
publishers. I really wanted to write this after I had written a book. Tortellini at Midnight was my third book. And that was a book that was sort of inspired by the home cooking in my husband's family
Mm-hmm.
and the story of his ancestors and his family who came from both southern and northern Italy and then met in the middle in Tuscany. And so I included lots of family stories, lots of old family photos, and then recipes from these three regions. And after this like huge, several year exploration of his family, I thought, and many people said to me, you should really do this about your own family and, and explore that as well. And a cookbook author who I'm really close with, Tessa Kiros,
Mm-hmm.
who's kind of like my mentor, she was the first person who kind of planted that seed. She said, this is what I would really like to see from you is I would really like to see a Japanese cookbook and like home cooking.
Mm-hmm.
Because, for many people, Japanese food, I think, is very sort of intimidating. People think of it as a really like chefy thing, or you have
Right.
to be very technique driven and have all these skills. But for me, Japanese food is just like Italian food. It's what I cook on a weeknight when I'm really tired
Mm-hmm.
and the kids are really hungry and
Right.
something quick, and when I just want something that makes me feel good and is very quick to make. That's what I go for.
Right.
So that was kind of the start of it, was this idea that somebody like someone I respected, like Tessa Kiros, who's written so many cookbooks, that she was like, that's the book I would buy, and it got me really thinking. So I started a proposal. I wrote a proposal. I pitched it to my publishers in late 2019, and they turned it down, because I think they wanted me to continue writing Italian cookbooks,
Yeah.
and maybe,
Or because they're nuts.
yeah, I
Yeah.
feel so too. Yeah, it was really disheartening. And I sort of sat on it for a few
Mhm.
years, wondering what to do with it. Partly, it made me more than ever want to publish it, and
Right.
then partly I thought maybe it's not good enough. Maybe I'm not Japanese enough. Maybe, but I don't know, the right timing. I don't know. It made me doubt myself a lot. So I
Yeah. And
thought I'm going to go
were
to
you
Japan.
working on it independently
I,
through this?
yeah, I was.
Mhm.
Well, we had the pandemic. I really had this idea I would go to Japan and like talk with my family there and
Yeah.
um, get some new photos and like kind of build up a better proposal and then repropose it. But then, then the pandemic kind of put a halt on everything. And I thought, okay, I'll wait until it's over and then I'll go back to Japan, and then I just kind of got impatient and I
Hmm.
kept working on it. And then I decided, you know what, I'm going to pitch it, but I'll give it to a pitch to another publisher. And that's how it came about.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you went on with it. I was thinking as I was reading this that I'm a half white, half Japanese American. But I think we had not relatively similar, but certainly a lot of overlap in our upbringings, and our exposure to sort of Japanese culture and cuisine, as children of immigrants. And to me, it was amazing just how much connection, cultural and sort of specific sort of food memory connections I had with like virtually every recipe in this book I was reading through. It's like, oh yeah, it's like this is a potato salad my grandmother made, and like I can, I can remember like my grandmother had like a little copper pot of hojicha, and so a lot of these recipes, even coming from from the other side of the world, to immediately feel like, yeah, this is Japanese home cooking. And so I think, yeah, I guess I really appreciate that you went through with this, and that your memories of, I guess, of growing up in a Japanese household so closely match mine, despite our despite growing up in completely different parts of the world. Um,
I
I
was
guess that wasn't a question. That was, it was just a
No, I was
comment.
going to say, I was really hoping that was something um, that other people could connect with and connect to, because I also did grow up with so many part Japanese people,
Hmm.
and I think that we had all sort of very similar things that for us were very would be now very nostalgic. And I had like a woman who I've never met write to me on Instagram, and she said that she grew up with a Japanese mother, and she never got to ask her for any of her recipes before she passed away. And that now that she has my book, she's like, thank you for writing this. Now I can cook my mother's food. And it brought tears to my eyes. Because that's one of the reasons why I wanted to write something like this, and also to share what home cooking is, because I think people who don't grow up with somebody Japanese who's cooking for you, I think it's really hard to experience proper home cooking, because so much of what we know about Japanese food in international restaurants is something very specific. You know, in Japan, you go out to eat very specific foods, but you wouldn't really eat sort of the home cooked things out at a restaurant.
A lot of sort of Asian cuisines end up in that sort of same area, where what we're familiar with is what you would get at a restaurant, as opposed to, you know, both in, I don't know, Chinese food, Thai food. Like you don't see very much home cooking in the West, at least, but you do experience the restaurant cuisine a lot, which makes it seem more intimidating to do the home cooking stuff at home.
Yeah, exactly.
No, but like you, so I one of my dirty secrets is that I was also, so I was excited when I saw this book, but I was also like, I've been thinking about writing a book on Japanese, sort of my experience with Japanese home cooking for a while, and specifically I was thinking of writing a book on yoshoku cuisine, so Western food in Japan, which is something that we had a lot of growing up, and then this book came, I was like, oh, this is like, she's already done it. But obviously our experiences and what I think what we have to say will be very different, but I know I was really delighted by that. There is a section you have in this book on yoshoku cuisine. Do you want to talk a little bit about what that is, what it means in Japanese home cooking, and what it means specifically to you?
Yeah. So yoshoku is like a Japanese Western food that has turned into Japanese food. So you know, things like tonkatsu or Japanese curry. There are a lot of dishes that were introduced into Japan when Japan opened to the West in the late 1800s. And then after also there was another sort of flourish of new foods introduced into Japan after World War II. And the Japanese have been so brilliant at taking these foods and turning them into something so distinctly Japanese, even though they weren't originally Japanese. And for me, this is like a really beautiful mix of sort of familiar Western foods that are also distinctly, uniquely Japanese, and they have a real soft spot. I have a real soft spot for yoshoku. It's something that instantly reminds me of my childhood. So
yeah,
corn soup or the curry, Japanese curry, we eat all the time. We used to have that all the time growing up.
It's interesting to me, like yoshoku also kind of straddles this line between, it's very common in home cooking, but it's also common in like food courts, right? And like shopping malls and stuff. Like
or schools and cafeterias.
Yeah, it's like institutional, but it's also like commonly home cooked stuff.
Yeah, very. And like all home cooked things, there are you know, variations upon variations upon variations. So it's like the Japanese curry, it's not just one dish. Everybody has their own thing, their own spin on it, their own thing that they put in it. And I really love that about yoshoku.
Yeah. Did your bachan have like a secret, or your mother have a secret curry ingredient? My grandmother always put golden raisins in, which I was not necessarily crazy about, but that was always in there.
Yeah, my mom did it quite sort of simple. And I suspect that's because my brother, when he was little, was kind of a picky eater. But she was the one that told me about her friends that put their secret ingredient is chocolate. And when she said that to me, I knew instantly how that would work so well, like dark chocolate, because there's a really well-known, like kind of ancient, well, let's say it's a Renaissance wild boar stew that you find here in Tuscany. And the secret ingredient in that is dark chocolate.
It's chocolate, yeah.
And it just makes it like luscious and silky and gives it this like depth of flavor. So I tried that, and I absolutely loved that addition. It's like a
Hmm.
little square, it's not crazy amount
Yeah,
of
yeah.
sugar. A
Just
little
like a nice
square.
dark chocolate. Yeah, that
Yeah,
sounds good. I will
yeah,
try
I
that.
like.
I'll try that. Can you talk to me about some of the, I don't know, common threads? It could be ingredients or it could be just sort of cultural practices of Japanese cuisine that have followed you. I mean, because you grew up in Australia and China. You've lived in the US, you live in Italy now. Can you talk about some of the common threads of Japanese culture or cuisine that have sort of followed you through your life and that you still draw inspiration or or even that you still cook or work with today?
Um, so there's something that there are a couple of things that I've always cooked whenever I just actually for as long as I can remember. And these are things that I think of as my like ultimate comfort foods. So when I'm I don't know, when I'm really like not feeling well, or if I'm really stressed, or just like literally need some comfort, or when I was studying, or yeah, all of those kind of situations. There are two things that I really loved, and I would sort of hoard these, mochi rice cakes,
Hmm.
the dry ones that you get, that you can, you can store them in the pantry. They're like little squares.
I don't know if I've ever seen
I'll
those.
show you,
They're
I'll show you a picture because I'll.
okay. Dry
So
ones.
yeah, they come like vacuum packed in plastic, and you can store
Huh.
them in the pantry, which is great because then whenever you feel like it, you can literally just pull it out, and you can either cook them in like in a soup,
Uh-huh.
um or and then in a soup they get really like really sort of sticky soft,
Uh-huh.
um, or you can here it is, or you can grill them on like on a pan.
Oh, those are dry ones. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's called.
because these looked like the ones we got. These we would only ever have mochi like on New Year's.
Yeah,
And my grandmother would get it fresh and then grill it, like brush it with soy sauce and grill it.
like the round ones, or they were also square.
They were square. She would get like a slab of it and cut it into squares, and then
Yeah,
like on a little tabletop grill it, and then brush it with soy sauce. And then we never did it with. I saw this and he was like, "Oh, cheese sounds great on there." Where
so good.
what? Yeah, where does the cheese idea come? So first of all, you maybe explain exactly what mochi is, and
Okay,
because it's a unique textural experience, I think.
it is very unique. So mochi is pounded rice, and it's pounded glutinous rice. So it is very, very sort of sticky. And once that you pound it for these ones, they're able to make them dry, but you can make
Mhm.
as I said, like your grandmother had fresh ones. You can have fresh mochi as well. But these ones are like dried, and then when you reheat them, they kind of they revive, and they become really really sticky again inside. So the grilled ones, I just put this on like a dry pan, like a cast
Mhm.
iron pan, and they get all like kind of browned and sort of almost bubbly on the top, but inside very very sticky and very
Yeah.
very chewy, which is a texture that the Japanese love. I
Yeah.
love anything sticky rice related. I love it
How
all.
did the Italians feel about it?
Yeah, it's weird, because they like al dente, and they like
Hmm.
being able to like like a shorter sort of bite.
Right.
Um, I think this is weird, weird texture for
We were
Italian.
always told, we were always warned that like that little kids choke and die on New Year's every year from this, and to like be really
Yeah,
careful.
yeah. Also, old people, because
And old people, right?
you gotta be really careful chewing these. Yeah, you do. You can't
Can't
take
take a
really
big
big bites.
mouthful. Yeah.
Yeah, even though I would. I mean, I'm very greedy with mochi. So these ones, once they're grilled, and they're all sort of like puffy, you then dip them in soy sauce, and in my family we always put a slice of cheese on the top.
Yeah. Even when you like from the time you were a kid.
Yeah, when I was a
Wow.
kid,
Okay.
my mum
Yeah.
would do
That sounds
this.
great. Yeah.
My uncle Daisuke in Japan, he would do this.
Oh, wow.
And
Okay.
the mochi is really, really hot. That's the other dangerous thing about this mochi, is it's like deceivingly hot. And it holds the heat really well. So you just put a
Hmm.
little slice of cheese there, and it'll melt, if you as you're sort of before you even eat it.
That sounds
And
wonderful.
you wrap it in nori, in dried seaweed. It's the best snack ever. And this is the thing that will instantly pick me up. No matter what has happened, I will instantly feel better when I have one of these. Yeah.
How do you find how do you find shopping for ingredients in Italy? And also, when readers ask you where to shop for things, what's your recommendation?
So living in so I now live in a small town in Tuscany, but even when I lived in Florence, which is about 30 minutes away from me, getting really specific Japanese ingredients is tricky. It's really, really hard.
Mm-hmm.
Like at the supermarkets, I think the only things you can get are soy sauce and maybe packet miso soup.
And probably just
It's really
one type of soy sauce.
just one type. The pickings are very, very slim. And now there are a lot more so online shops also based in Italy. So I discovered recently a Japanese couple that live in Milan that have also a restaurant in Florence that now have an online shop. And that has been amazing because they have some really, really nice ingredients and also a really nice selection of sake. So when I was testing the book, I just went crazy on their online website, ordered a whole box of things that just, only had to come from Milan. And I found that like health food shops in Italy tend to sell a lot of Japanese ingredients.
Okay. Like
so
the soy sauces and kombucha, yeah.
So
Vinegar,
they would have
miso.
things like rice vinegar. They even had umeboshi vinegar. They had umeboshi, and they had kombu and agar agar. All these kind of things that people could use for alternative diets. And so
Katsuobushi, can you get that anywhere?
I can, but I had to go into Florence for that. There's like a one shop in Florence where I was able to get katsuobushi, but so over the years I would like sort of collect things and then between the health food store, the one shop in Florence, and then the other things, there's a renegade that then I would be able to like get this Japanese pantry.
Hi.
That's Luna. That's the rice living Luna.
Yeah. How's it going?
Look. And this is my mom who's come to visit from
Hi. Konnichiwa.
Sorry.
All right. Well, this is fun. No. What's your favorite what's your favorite food? What's your favorite thing for dinner?
What's your favorite thing for dinner?
Eggy rice.
Eggy rice.
Eggy rice. Okay. Is that like tamago gohan or is that like
gohan,
fried rice?
Yeah.
Tamago gohan? Oh, good. Yeah, that's my 2-year-old's favorite thing also. He calls it, egg and rice and soy sauce.
It's the best.
Mago gohan.
Soy sauce and just egg.
Just egg and rice? Yeah.
We were going to do a video where we make that, weren't we? Yeah. Because a lot of people were asking, how do you, I actually posted about the eggy rice.
Yeah.
And I actually cook it because that's the way that my mom used to make it when I was little. Cook it really quickly on a pan.
Oh, interesting.
So,
okay.
Yeah. So it is kind of a bit like fried rice.
Yeah. But what does the texture come out like?
I put the rice in when the egg is still not cooked. So the rice kind of gets soft and all right, darling. we're gonna do a video about that, aren't we?
Yeah. Right now. I want to send it to him.
Right now?
In a little bit.
I could use some of it right now.
All right. No, so you come with me. Here. You can take this one.
I'm just
not here. Go. All right. Hang on a second. I'm gonna now have to wrestle her to the ground.
Okay,
Sorry,
no worries.
I'm gonna do this for a second.
Oh man. I guess I don't know what my 2-year-old will be like when he's her age, but I can imagine a kid as stubborn as mine when they're older will be a little bit more difficult to deal with.
I'm really sorry about that.
Oh no, that's okay.
Yeah,
That's okay.
real
Yeah.
life. All right.
So egg and rice and soy sauce. Yeah, tamago kake gohan. So the way we made it, it was raw egg, so hot rice and a raw egg, and we just kind of beat it and beat it and beat it so it gets like an almost kind of frothy texture. But I guess it's like, you write about natto in there, and so we did it, yeah, similar to the way you do natto, which you beat and beat and beat until it gets like kind of extra sticky and fluffy. Yeah, fluffy. Yeah.
So that's the eggy rice.
Oh, okay, there it is. Yeah.
The tamago no gohan, and it is a little bit like just having kind of a fried rice with just egg in it. And I usually mix a bit of soy sauce into the egg and then put it in a quite hot pan. And then I dump the rice in like straight away. So the rice gets all sort of coated with the egg. So it's kind of soft.
Right.
Really great thing to do with leftover rice.
And for that, you don't need like the rice to be sort of super separate grains the way you would for like a chahan, for like a more Chinese style.
Oh yeah, no. Sometimes I make rice just specifically to make this, and so it'll be
fresh and clumpy,
warm and fresh. Yeah,
yeah.
And
That sounds great.
It's really good.
Yeah, that sounds really great.
I think my mom used to cook it because when we were growing up in Australia in the 80s, I think she was maybe not so confident about
eating the raw eggs,
or preparing raw egg for us.
Right.
Here in Japan, we would have it with raw egg. I loved the raw egg in Japan, and then at home in Australia, or when we lived in China, she would cook the egg. Yeah.
This is funny. This is now the second author talk I've done in the last week where I learned a new way to make like eggs and rice. Because I was doing an event with Molly Boz last week, and in her new book, she has this recipe for you take leftover rice and basically make like a crispy cake in a cast iron or a something pan, and then break holes in it and put eggs in it, and then you mix it all up while it's hot, so you get like kind of crispy and cooked rice. And then again, because egg and rice together is I think is my favorite combo, and like my kid's favorite combo, and it's very easy. It's always very easy no matter how you do it.
It's so good. I love egg and rice. It's the most comforting next to tomato and egg, I think also.
Yep. That is like something you see across cultures. My wife is Colombian, and there's a tomato, like a scrambled egg and tomato dish. It's obviously a Chinese dish. My mother made it. And there's an Italian, of course, they're Italian tomato and egg dishes too, right?
Well, there's a couple different names. Uova in Purgatorio is one of them, which is like egg in purgatory, because you make, usually that one would have a bit of chili in the tomato, and you make like a tomato sauce, and then you crack the eggs into it. Uova al pomodoro is the other name, like eggs in tomato. It's so good. Yeah,
it's a very universal combo. Can you tell me, just so as a cookbook, as another cookbook author, so one of the most difficult parts for me is sort of the organizational elements of it. I guess both of us came from the world of writing online, where organization is very different because you can refer back to things. It's more, you can write daily, whereas in a book, it's like you're making decisions that are going to be fixed in paper, and the order is going to be fixed. Can you talk a little bit about what you were thinking about in the organization of this book, and then also sort of in the recipe selection process, like how you cut what, I mean, I assume was a much longer list of recipes you wanted it to include that you had to cut down. Like, how did you make those decisions?
Yeah, that's something that I find difficult, that I've always found difficult with every book, because it's so easy. I love that, like on a blog you can go back and edit,
right?
And you can always like add that thing in that you forgot, or you can fix that thing that you forgot. And that's always very daunting for me about writing cookbooks. One of the things that I did was I sent out all of my recipes, the ones I was thinking of using, to recipe testers. And I just put a call out on my blog and on Instagram, and people wrote into me, sort of whoever emailed me first, I would send them some recipes to test. And so I had these recipes all sort of tested by people from all over the world, in all different places, and pretty much all of them, except for maybe 2 people, had never cooked any of these dishes before, and were unfamiliar with the dishes. So for me, that was an amazing way to be able to see sort of in real time what would happen when this book is out there.
Right.
Problems or what issues would people maybe have, so that I could fix that before I actually had it in print. And so I think I had about like 50 recipe testers.
That's
and
great.
everybody tested several recipes each. So I have 80 recipes in the book, or there might actually be a little bit more than 80, but every recipe was tested several times.
Right,
I had
right.
a spreadsheet with like all the recipes, who had tested what, and it was interesting because I let people choose out of the recipe list, and they had no photos, no backstory or anything. They didn't have the book. They just had
just the actual recipe itself.
Just the titles of the recipes. And so it was really interesting to see what people would pick.
Yeah.
Based on
what surprised you? What was like the most surprising popular recipe?
Oh, my mom's pickled daikon was like the one that everybody wanted to make. And
did it have the words "my mom's" in it?
Yeah, it did.
Okay, yeah. That makes sense. Yeah.
Lemon daikon recipe. Yeah, that was a really big one.
I feel like I would make anything that said my mother's X, whatever it was. If you
That's what it was. But I just thought that like daikon, I didn't realize was an ingredient that people would be would be able to find easily and would be interested to make. Or
do they call it do they call it daikon in Australia?
Yeah, they do.
Okay, because I know they call it mooli in the UK, right?
Oh, really?
I think so. Yeah, it's called mooli.
Yeah, so that one was a surprise. And what was really nice about that was I was able to I send out like a questionnaire to my recipe afterwards, just to get so that I can get the feedback that I need to know. And some of that is like, how easy was it to find the ingredients, or did it come out as expected? And then people often, this wasn't part of the feedback, but pretty much every time people would send me photos of what their dishes looked like. And I was amazed. I was sharing this with my husband, going, look at these dishes. They look exactly like they're supposed to look.
Oh, nice.
I've never made it before. They're not familiar with it. And
you didn't even send them pictures either.
No, I didn't. Yeah. And so that for me was really the best feedback, because it meant that somehow, what I had written was right.
Right.
They were able to make it. But I also think that so many of the dishes that I chose, I really wanted them to be, well, for me, they're recipes that are very nostalgic, and they remind me of home. But I wanted to show other people also how easy and simple Japanese home cooking really is. It's not the same thing as the things you're eating at a restaurant. There's nothing really to be intimidated about. It's like whatever else you're cooking in your kitchen, you can do these things too. And so I think that was for me a really nice sign, was to see the photos that people were sending me looked like they were supposed, how they were supposed to look. So that was great.
That must feel, I mean, as a recipe writer, that's got to be sort of, the ultimate compliment, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I think the idea of, having recipe testers, it's also just like a really nice way to make, a really nice way to sort of actively involve, people in your audience with the process. It makes them, I mean, I think it gives people a sense of ownership over the final product as well, to know that they contributed to the process. And it's a great way to sort of combine sort of both your virtual audience and your virtual connections and like a physical book that everyone can hold,
It's something I've been doing since my first book, and it's one of the things I look forward to most, because I think the writing part is very, very solitary. It's just you sitting I'm sitting in my kitchen usually writing on my laptop, and it's just a screen, and it's I find it quite sort of lonely, the writing part. And the recipe testing part is nice because it's the first kind of collaboration that I had this whole book. I even took all of these photos. Well, not all of them. I took most of the photos by myself, and then I needed help. And so I asked a photographer in Sydney, in London, to come and help me take a few photos as well, some of the step-by-step photos. But otherwise, the rest of it is just, it's so solitary. I have to make all the decisions on my own. It's really nice. I like that collaborative kind of, and the conversation that comes from talking with your recipe testers and just talking to people about also food and how did you like it? How did you find it? What did you think? It's been a really fun part of the process.
I feel, for me, part of writing a book there's two elements of it, where part of it is that I feel like it's an opportunity to research something, to spend a long time researching something new, and learning about something new, and doing some testing, and in another sense, it's also a good opportunity to sort of reflect on things that are personally important to you already, things that that you grew up with, and reflect on those in new ways. And I mean, to me, like, sort of every book is kind of a balance of that, and to me, at least, it felt like this one, was a lot more of you reaching back, further than what your other cookbooks have. How much of, I guess, my question is sort of, how much of the content that you end up putting into this one book is there because of like an intense childhood personal connection, or some sort of connection to it, versus stuff that you wanted to, say, just teach the audience about, and or maybe things that you wanted to research yourself in the process of sort of filling out a book that is going to be called Gohan? Like were there dishes in here that you weren't as intimately familiar with that you found sort of exciting and new to start researching, or was it mostly existing personal stuff?
That's a really great question. I can pretty much say that every single one of these recipes is something I absolutely love. It's something that I either grew up eating or actually, like, for the natto, to be honest, that was something I grew up watching other people eat, and I didn't eat it myself until like very recently. I'm like, I did write in there, I'm like 40 years late to the natto party. And now, but I love it now. I don't know why I avoided it for so long. I think I was afraid I wouldn't like it.
It's not
but
texture.
It's so great. I love natto now. But there are all things that are for me personally, things that I love, that remind me of somebody that I love, or that I've shared with people that I love. And many of them are things that I had never tried to cook before. They're just things that I adore eating whenever I'm in Japan. Things like like anpan, the red bean buns. Oh my God, I love those. I could eat those every single day.
Yeah.
And when I am in Japan, I do go to a different place every day, and I try the anpan from that place. And
we would go to the Japanese market, the Japanese supermarket across the Hudson River in New Jersey, like twice a month or so, and there's always they were making fresh anpan buns in the food court there, so I would always get. That was like a very distinct memory. Every time we went there, I would always get like the kids were allowed to pick one treat, and I'd always got the anpan there.
I would go for the anpan every time. Yeah, so I had never made that before, but I knew that was one of the things I wanted to put in the book, because it's something I just love so much. So that was a nice thing to sort of explore and test and figure out how to make over here. Obviously, I can't get anko, so I was making the anko, so the red bean paste, myself too, which is nice, because I actually prefer my own homemade anko to any of the ones you buy in a packet. Or
do you make it with dry azuki beans? That you can get there.
Yes. Yeah. For some reason, dried azuki beans, easy to find. Anko, impossible. But it's pretty easy to make. So it's a combination of sort of things that I just really loved, and things that I wanted to try and replicate, because living over here, not close to Japan anymore. My grandparents are no longer there, so I don't visit Japan as often as I used to when I was a child. I used to visit every year growing up. There are a lot of foods that I really, really missed, and wanted to figure out how to make so that I can make them here when I do really miss them. And so, there are a lot of things like that in the book as well. Actually, the whole dessert chapter is a lot of that, because there's a lot of anko. I could have put anko, which is red bean paste.
Right.
I could have put that in every single dessert recipe. And I remember at one point I was looking at my list of the recipes I was writing down, like, these are the things I want to put in here. And literally everything in the dessert chapter was anko related. Anko everything. And I thought, okay, what if somebody doesn't want to really eat anko, or they don't, they can't get it, or they can't get the red beans. So I added a few other recipes there just to diversify. But yeah.
So when you go to a Japanese, like let's say you once a month you get to go to a Japanese supermarket, a place where you can stock up on any sort of Japanese products or ingredients. What are the things that like you immediately put into your shopping cart?
Okay, so it's usually the katsuobushi for sure.
Which is the dried bonito flakes. That's like
Yes.
the basis of dashi. One of the two main ingredients in dashi.
Yes, because I like to make my own dashi as well. And it like that sounds really sort of, oh, it's so complicated, but it takes like 10. It's actually
it's like if you can make tea, you can make dashi.
Exactly. If you can make tea, you can make dashi. And so that's one of the things I always stock up on. Nori, like dried seaweeds. My kids love snacking on that as well. And the kitty mochi. So there's the little block mochi.
Okay, yeah. I'm gonna have to look for those next time. Okay.
Oh, I love those. So if I see those, and strangely, I can get those in Florence as well.
Okay,
which,
all right.
the first time I saw that, I like stocked up, and then I treasure them, and I keep them in the pantry. It's just mine. Nobody else in the family wants to eat them, so it's great. I have like my own stash, and I look after them. I count them. I run out. Before I run out, I have to go back to Florence and get more. What else? I like to always have mirin and rice vinegar, and I think it's really tricky for me to get like proper mirin, hon mirin, which really means like real mirin. It's not just like a syrup. So
right, it's not just like sake with corn syrup.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's another one. If I find that, then I stock up on that. And the other thing I really, really love is toasted sesame oil.
Okay.
And yeah. So that's the other thing I always stick in my bag. Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. I found it's strange, finding mirin in the East Coast. It's actually of the U.S. It's actually difficult to find like real mirin. It's all like flavored sake. Whereas out here in on the West Coast in the Pacific Northwest, it's actually been quite easy. So I don't know what same with Chinese cooking wines. I find that you can only find Chinese wine with salt added on the East Coast, whereas here you can find the real wine. I guess maybe it's easier to import from across the Pacific here, I guess.
That might be it. Wow.
Yeah.
I'm really hoping one day to make it to Seattle, so it's good to know what ingredients.
Yes, you should come. Yeah, there's some great Japanese markets here, and a great community here. Great community of cookbook lovers here also. I think there's a lot of people from Seattle watching right now.
Yeah, that's great.
And the best cookbook shop in the country, maybe in the world. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, actually, it's mostly for the cookbook shop. It's like my dream shop.
Yeah. Can you I don't know much. We got a little time. Can you tell me about, so for me, I started writing, I worked in magazines a little bit, but I really sort of found my footing and found my voice in the world of food blogs, where I was kind of writing every single day and kind of really practicing at it. And I know you started writing as a blogger, and how did you, can you talk to me about the sort of the process of finding your voice, both in sort of your blogging, and then also how that translated into finding your voice as a cookbook author? I guess how that voice has evolved over the years, and whether you find it still sort of evolving or exciting.
Yeah, I think what's happened. So when I started blogging in 2010, and I, honestly, at the time I started blogging, I had no idea even what a blog was. I was just like, I want to do this thing where I'm like writing about the food that I'm eating in Florence, living in Florence, and the places, the farms, cheese farms, or the wineries that we're visiting, and I want to sort of share that. And I think at the time there was really not very much awareness about regional Italian foods back in 2010. And being someone who was living in Florence, I could see that there was, people didn't know what Tuscan food was. And I read a lot of food magazines, and I would read like an Italian British writer who's not from Tuscany at all, from another part of Italy, you know, say something completely incorrect about Tuscan food, but everyone just goes, oh, but he's Italian, so it has to be right, you know. So,
right.
and I was like, okay, there's like all this, like, nobody knows what Florentine food is. And so I wanted to talk about that and sort of delve into also the history. I really love history, and sort of all of the stories behind why that food, or why that dish, or why is something eaten that way. And so at the beginning, that's what my blog was really all about. And that's what my first books were about as well. But then something, I think, changed in 2018, 2019, when I was writing Tortellini at Midnight. That book was much more personal, where I was starting to bring in family stories and talking about personal things. And I don't know what it was really. I don't want to, I mean, I wonder if it was like social media, where, you know, people share a lot of their daily life on social media, and blogging was changing a lot. The blog was sort of moving away from the blog and then onto like Instagram, or onto social media, and Instagram became like a kind of a micro blog in a way.
Right.
And so, yeah, so I think something along the way.
Are you on TikTok yet?
Changed. I know, and I
Okay.
don't ever will be. I think I'm too old for that. I don't know.
Yeah.
I will be on TikTok anytime soon. I do sort of still like being on Instagram. I like my community on Instagram, and yeah, but I think that something definitely did change, where I felt more comfortable to write about personal stories in regards to food, whereas before I was maybe a bit separate from it, where I was sort of telling, like, reporting on
right. Yeah, there's a difference between reporting
food.
and versus sort of personal stuff.
Yeah. So at the moment, that's where I feel like with Gohan, I have gone more personal than ever, because now, really about
I certainly felt that way.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask some of the questions. I thought there were only 3 here, but it looks like there's 8. Well, I guess not all of them are questions, but I'm going to ask some questions from the audience. So speaking of personal questions, so the conversation about what Emiko's children eat is an excellent lead into my question. Will your next cookbook be Japanese, Italian? I was inspired to ask you this question because one of my favorite restaurants in Vancouver, Chissà Tanto, is Japanese Italian. I wish we had more cookbooks that reflect the multiplicity of lived reality in the world today.
Oh,
that's a very specific question, but I think you probably have a broader answer.
Well, my broader answer to that is sadly, I don't think I'm going to be talking about Japanese Italian food. But one of the things that I have noticed over the years I've been living in Italy, which is now, many years since 2005, is that I see so many parallels between Japanese food and Italian food. And I don't think they're really even that obvious, but there are things that I notice about the food, and maybe even some aspects of the food culture. So I think that they complement each other really, really well. And I'm not really one for fusion food, but saying that, I do love yoshoku, which is fusion food.
What are some of those elements?
Yoshoku is actually Japanese food for me, but I do love, like, Japanese Italian fusion. I think works so well because I think there are these parallels that complement each other.
What would be an example of one of those parallels?
I mean, one of the things I like to describe to Italians when they're, like, asking about Japanese food, I just say, okay, look at the geography, like, look at the shape of Japan and look at the shape of Italy, and they're both sort of long, and Italy's a peninsula and Japan's an archipelago, but you have a lot of coastline, lots of islands, volcanic, both of them, lots of mountains. So you've got, like, this a lot, Japan probably has more mountains. Japan is very, very mountainous, but you have the mountains and the sea, and both of those places are really important in Italian cuisine and Japanese. Something my mum used to say to me that's always ringing in my ears is that the perfect Japanese meal should have something from the mountain and something from the sea. And I've always loved that idea. And then I actually lived on the coast of Italy in 2015, and
Mm-hmm.
all the food there was something from the mountain and something from the sea. It was like chestnuts and octopus together, or like mushrooms and calamari together. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
whoa, this is really, there were certain dishes that tasted like Japanese dishes to me. And that was when I realized these kind of parallels. And then when you look at the climates, there are sort of very similar climates. The seasonality, eating like super peak season
Mm-hmm.
food, that is so
Simplicity
attractive
of ingredients, I
to
think.
Japanese, and everything being so simple because you're
Uh,
eating like such
yeah.
nice like peak season foods. And then you've got like Hokkaido is like Alto Adige, and Okinawa is Sicily, like so
Right.
there's like the same kind of climates up and down. I don't
Yeah.
know,
And some of the similar relationships to the mainland cuisine, the
yeah, yeah.
and different similarities and differences. Speaking of things from the sea, Ryan Smith asks, the combo choices always feel overwhelming at the market. How do you know what to select?
Oh, that is a good question, because I don't have a very big selection of kombu here at all. Like one kind that I can get, and so I'm lucky to even find it, and I get that. But if I have the choice, I don't know. I usually go I usually go for what looks like a very nice sheet of kombu. Sometimes you see them and they're just like really sort of wrinkled little strips. I like the ones that are like thick and
Yeah.
flat. So if
Do
I
you
had
do
the
you look
choice,
for the sort of like the dusty? Do you like them sort of cleaner looking or sort of whiter and dustier with more of the sort of mineral deposits?
I like the dusty ones. I
Yeah.
don't mind. I've seen people say to wipe them off, and I like the dusty ones.
I
I
like
keep
the
them.
dusty ones. Yeah. I feel
Yeah.
like I get more flavor out of them.
Yeah.
Yep. Um, all right. Do you have, oh, Ryan Smith also asked, do you have a particular story about, where'd they go? About some of your challenges in creating a recipe and making it taste like your memory, or that you feel like you found something better than your memory?
Yeah, one of the recipes that I was really chasing down, well, there were two recipes that I really like chased down, because I had a very specific memory that I was trying to, recreate and get that moment back. One of them was satsuma age, which is like a fried fish cake.
Mm-hmm.
And my grandfather loved those, and we had very similar tastes in food, and I loved them as well. And he would go into Tokyo. They lived about 45 minutes out of Tokyo, to the Mitsukoshi department store to buy very specific satsuma age from a particular shop there. And that's something that I really wish I knew how to recreate. I've got a satsuma age recipe in the book, and it's not quite the same. It's not, but I used what I think is going to be easier for people to get, like simple white fish. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's probably what it was, is that the satsuma age that I have in my memory is a specific maybe mixture of seafood, that I don't know what was in there. So, but I love the idea of the satsuma age. It's
Yeah.
like it's similar to like a Thai fish cake. You just
Uh-huh.
like blend everything together. And
And it
there's a
has
bit
like
of,
a sort of bouncy texture.
it's quite bouncy,
Yeah.
yeah. And then you have like this fish sort of paste, that
Mm-hmm.
you then mold into little balls or discs, and then you fry them. They're super delicious.
Hmm.
And the other recipe was a tofu recipe. And here, the tofu selection is not bad, awful.
Oh.
It's really bad. And my grandmother used to always serve fresh tofu every morning for breakfast.
Uh-huh. My
She had
kids
a
just had tofu for breakfast.
I love it.
Tofu
And
for breakfast, and my daughter's having tofu for lunch also today.
I could eat it for breakfast every day.
Yeah.
The tofu that my grandmother would get was very, very fresh. It was made across the street from where she lived. So that was another thing I was trying to chase down, and I decided, okay, this isn't really home cooking, but I really want some fresh tofu. And so I
Yeah.
put a tofu recipe in the book, and I went to Japan, to see how tofu was made there, so that I
Mm-hmm.
could write about it properly.
Where
Make,
did you go in somewhere near Kyoto, or where were you at?
I was in Nagano.
In Nagano. Okay, nice.
Nagano. So it's in the mountains, about 2 hours on the train from
Mm-hmm.
Tokyo. And he was a lovely older man, Kobayashi-san,
Yeah.
who makes tofu for like the local schools.
Okay.
So he's been up since like 3 a.m. making fresh tofu because that's how fresh it is. So they have fresh tofu that day, for their lunch.
Yeah, that sounds
Incredible.
amazing.
That's amazing. And then in the morning, and then we arrived in the morning, and he showed us how to make tofu, and it was fantastic. It's exactly like making cheese. If you've ever seen cheese being made, it blows my mind how similar cheese making and tofu making. It's like identical. Yeah.
And like cheese, I mean, you can do different things with it to give it different textures and different and different flavors at the end.
Yeah. So that was another thing I really chased down to try and get that same memory back.
And did you see the monkeys when you were in Nagano also?
No, I didn't.
The bathing monkeys? No.
No, we were there actually it was like this time, I think it was October.
Okay.
Yeah, but I'll go back.
Yeah. All right. I think our time is up. I could talk for much longer, but I think our time is up. Thank you so much. This is a lot of fun for me. I hope it was fun for you. The book is, I think, really fantastic. Just very, very representative of exactly what you set out to do, which I think is represent Japanese home cooking and show everyone how simple and comforting and delicious it could be, because it's like, like you said, it's what I turn to when I need to make something simple at home. It's almost always going to be pasta or Japanese food, because those are both things that I find so easy and comforting, great for family. So thank you.
Thank you, Kenji. It's been such an honor to talk with you, and thank you, Lara. This has been so fun. Thank you.
It's been so fun, and I think Emiko, I've been trying to talk Emiko into coming to Seattle for years, and I think you did a really great job of making the case today. The chat was full of how you have to go to a Wajimaya and all the things. So spring, Emiko, I think it needs to happen. Congratulations on the book. It really is wonderful. And thank you everyone for tuning in today. Thank you, Kenji, again. This has been like a whole week of conversation. So thank you so much again for doing this. And Emiko, it's just been such a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I hope we get to meet in person for more than just running into you on the street in Florence at some point.
Oh, no,
All right. Thank you, everyone, and happy cooking.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.